All right, so I'm here with my friend Justin, and we are going to talk about bikes. I actually purchased a bike from Justin. I came here to pick it up, and I'm going to show that at the very end of the video, so stay tuned for that. But when I came over to look at the bike, I saw Justin's bike collection, and I'm like, I gotta film this. So Justin's going to walk us through his bikes, talk a little bit about them. But first I want to just talk a little bit about Justin. So Justin and I met riding our bikes.
Bike commuting.
Yeah. So I would ride my bike into work every day before I opened the bike shop. Had about a 15-mile ride, and it was pitch black at night. I'd be riding along, and every day I would look back, and in the distance I would see Justin's headlight. And Justin would catch me. We'd ride a little bit, and then he would ride ahead. So we've become friends a little bit, and I've just recently got to know him. I got to see his collection, so I wanted to walk you through that. But first of all, Justin, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into bikes?
So I started riding bikes, I started riding when I was a kid, obviously.
Yeah.
And I didn't ride very much when I was a kid because I crashed, wiped out, skinned knees, elbows, the whole thing. And, I hated that. My dad promised, my dad was like, okay, it's like, if I take you to McDonald's and buy you, like, the Naboo Starfighter from, episode 1, like, Star Wars, it's like, well, you promised to ride your bike again.
Okay.
And I said, yes, absolutely,
Okay.
And that was probably when I was about 10 years old, 9 years old in that range.
Okay.
And I made good on my promise, but it took me about 15-ish years to make good on that promise.
Okay.
So I guess probably more like 10-ish, but anyway. And so I didn't really start riding again until I was 20, I think. That's when I started kind of riding again. And it bit and got the bike bug real quick.
And what kind of bikes were you riding at that time when you got the bug?
So when I got the bug, I was riding a Next full suspension mountain bike.
Okay. All right.
And my dad was riding of a morning, and so I started riding with him as well, and it was fun. It was a father-son thing that we could enjoy together. And then we both decided we wanted to buy road bikes, and so we bought a couple of nice road bikes. And then from there, it just kind of turned into, I'm like, what can I do to customize this bike? And I really found out that I didn't want to customize it because I didn't know what I was doing. And so the easy thing to do was fixed gear and single speed stuff. And so that's kind of what got me into fixed gear. And I rode fixed gear bikes for a long time, probably 4 or 5 years, something like that, before I kind of got to a point where my knees were like, no, we don't want to do this anymore. So, and then I started kind of getting into custom built track bikes. I never had a track bike custom built, but I would buy some secondhand.
Okay.
And so I started buying some, Geek House was the brand that I bought, a couple different track bikes, custom built. And they were cool bikes, and that's kind of what got me into the custom hand-built bike thing. Even though I was just buying secondhand, they weren't actually my custom bikes.
Right.
But yeah, that's kind of what led me to appreciating custom bikes and what they had to offer.
Yeah. And then from there you started collecting bikes.
Yeah, so I mean, I buy every bike with the intention of like, I'm going to ride this bike, and then you end up, it's like your favorite pair of shoes, I mean, you end up finding the one that's like, this is the one that fits, this is the one that feels good, and that's the one you tend to gravitate towards.
Well, that's one thing I could say about your collection. A lot of people have a lot of bikes, but you've got a collection.
Yep.
And there's a certain style that you like.
Absolutely.
So we're going to go through all that, talk about your bikes, but so basically, Rock Lobster and Richard Sachs right now, right? Those are your main focus. So how'd you get into those bikes? And talk a little bit about each one, because most people may not know about those two
Absolutely.
brands.
So I mean, really, Richard Sachs I probably appreciated before I appreciated Rock Lobster, which is Paul Sadoff. And so I never had a Sachs until a handful of years ago. But I remember watching the Rafa Continental films on YouTube, and watching those guys ride through brutal elements and all that kind of stuff. But they all, I'm not gonna say they all, but a lot of them had custom bikes. And one of the guys was riding a Sachs, and it was black and had the pink lettering, and for whatever reason it resonated with me. And then I started looking into like, who is Richard Sachs? And I just kind of slowly became enamored by who he is and what he does. And so I've always had an appreciation for him from that point on. And then Paul Sadoff was one that I found a little bit later, and basically I was looking to have a custom bike built. I got kind of bit by one builder who ended up declaring bankruptcy and ended up like taking all my money, and so anyway, that was not a good deal. And so after that, I ended up finding Paul and connecting with him. And so I had my second custom bike built by Paul. Actually, my first one is this Thrive over here. But my second custom bike was built by Paul, and so that's, you know, really Paul just builds really affordable custom bikes, and he kind of does whatever you want to do, which is kind of unique about Paul. And it's a situation where I think him and Richie are kind of, you know, separate from that, and that's what kind of makes, I think, what I have here unique is like, you know, Richie will tell you like he builds your bike made to measure, or his bike made to measure, and Paul just kind of is like, what do you want to build, you know, and he kind of goes after it. So they're very unique, but the cool thing is they've been building for a similar amount of time. They're a similar age. You see them at cyclocross events together a lot of times, which is super cool. So anyway, I think they're both really cool guys.
And you've really built a relationship with them, right? I mean,
I've got a good relationship with
them when
Richie.
you're thinking about something or you want another bike.
For sure. You know, like with Richie, I do I do some illustrations of his bikes, and that's kind of how him and I actually kind of came to know each other. I was randomly just doing some bicycle drawings, and I would feature his bikes as the bikes that the people were riding. And I don't know why I did that. I guess because in my mind, I just think that Richard Sachs bikes are kind of like they're just iconic, and that's why for me, when I'm like, I'm going to draw somebody riding a bike, it's going to be a Sachs, you know. And so that's kind of how I developed a relationship with him, and that's you know, and it's kind of blossomed from there, which is really cool. And then with Paul, it's just been kind of a working relationship. Like I've had 2 bikes custom built by Paul at this point. And, you know, when I had the first one built, my wife and I went out to Santa Cruz. We visited Paul, went to his shop. He was super nice. I mean, he literally wrote down a list of restaurants that we should go to and, like, places we should go visit. It was like, you know, when we left, he's like, oh, if you guys need anything while you're staying here, just let me know, you know. And so, I mean, he was super cool. And so that was my first, you know, bike built by him was during that visit. So that was awesome. The second one we did remotely, but at that point, you know, I kind of had the relationship. He had all my measurements and everything still, so it was easy for him to go ahead and do that build. So yeah, I mean.
And then you have 3 now, right? Or
so I have
3 Richards or 2.
So I have 2 Sachs, and then I have 2 Rock Lobsters that were built for me, and then I've got 2 other ones that I bought secondhand. Yeah. All right. For sure.
So you just added one to your collection, right?
I did just add another Sachs, yes.
All right, so we'll talk about that.
I haven't posted that on social media yet. That's brand new. So.
All right, well, I'll wait till you do that before I post the video.
No worries.
But you're also an artist, too.
I do some drawing, yes.
You do that, and we'll maybe I'll feature some of those.
Absolutely.
Okay. But you have a really artistic eye in your bikes and also in your cars and in your artwork.
I like everything to look a certain way.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. All right, well, let's talk about the bikes. I'm going to shift over to the camera and we'll do that. That's the hard part is, though, you got so many bikes trying to figure out which one you're going to ride every day, right?
Right. It's kind of like guys who some of the cars, they just throw all their keys in a jar.
Yeah, it's kind of like, what mood are you in?
They drive.
All right, Justin. We're gonna first talk about your Thrive. So tell me a little bit about this bike.
So Thrive is kind of obviously not really well known. It was a bike brand that a friend of mine started. He lived in Savannah, Missouri at the time. He now lives in Colorado, and he was building custom fillet brazed bikes. So this bike is actually fillet brazed. It's super clean, looks really good. And this was the 4th bike that he built. The first 2 he built for himself, or the first 3 he built for himself and his wife. And so this was the first one that was, you know, kind of a public bike or whatever. But him and I were friends from the bike shop I was working at. And so I told him, hey, when you want to build a bike, let's build a bike. And so that's what we did. And I thought I was quick and racerish at the time. So I was like, man, I want you to build me the super light, super sleek bike. And so that's what he did. Built it out of a True Timber S3. So the bike is really light. It's been through several different upgrades or like stages, so to speak, of like what components I've run on it. But the majority of them are what was on it when I had the bike built. Ironically, I told him I wanted it to be to have 23s because that was the time period this bike was built in. And thankfully, he had the foresight to build it a little bit with a little more tire clearance. So it now actually has 30s on it. Rides great, super light, super responsive, and it's just really unique. And it's a bike that I will keep forever because my buddy Darryl built it for me, and so I'm just gonna hold on to it.
That is awesome. All right, the brown Rock Lobster.
The brown Rock Lobster. So this is the first Rock Lobster I had built. This is the one that my wife and I went to Santa Cruz on vacation. I was able to get her to go because I said, hey, let's go to Santa Cruz on vacation.
A bike vacation.
Going to visit Paul at Rock Lobster. So this is the one that I visited Paul. He did the measurements for me. We talked about what I wanted. It was a really funny conversation because he's like, oh, you want a disc brake road bike? And I'm like, no, actually I want it to be rim brakes. And he was like, oh, okay. And I said, the next part's really going to surprise you. And he's like, what's that? And I said, I think I want to put a quill stem on it. And he was like, what? And so we had to discuss it for a little bit. But basically, I got tired of buying vintage bikes that didn't have good tire clearance or didn't have the right wheel spacing or whatever. So I told him I kind of wanted to build a neo-retro style road bike.
Okay.
And so that's what he did. And it turned out super cool. Kit-wise, it's basically SRAM red all the way through. It's got the EE Cycle Works brakes, Nitto SimWorks bar and stem, Thompson seat post, my typical Bontrager Paradigm saddle. It's got profile elite road hubs, and it's an awesome bike. I rode this bike a lot for several years. I think the first 2 years that I had it, I put somewhere like 17,000 miles on it.
Wow.
And it was really funny because I'd roll up to group rides and people would just like look at it and be like, oh man, that's such a cool vintage bike. Like, how old is it? It's in such good shape. And I'd be like, actually, it's newer than your Specialized tarmac. It was built last year.
Yeah.
This bike on Sunday, and I did not clean it up at all. So that's
all right.
It's still kind of fresh.
I like a bike that gets ridden,
Yeah,
That's the one thing. You ride all of your bikes, right?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't, nothing's a show bike, nothing's off, well, except the spider paint bike. I'm guilty, I haven't rode that bike much at all. But now this bike has like this giant chip right here that just like, I don't even know where it came from. It's just came, I was like, I got home one day, like, what happened?
Oh, no.
Like, it just, like, obviously a gravel chunk flow and like nailed it or something.
Yeah.
Or whatever, but anyway.
So is this your Richard Sachs? Was this your first Sachs?
No.
Okay.
I have actually owned a lot of Sachs frames over the past handful of years. The first one I think I got in 2017 maybe. And it was a little bit too big, so it got turned into a flat bar single speed. It was a Sachs from the early 80s.
Okay.
I sold that one and then ironically got one that was a little too small, and it was a 54. And so it was from the late 70s, I think.
Okay.
And rode that for a little bit, sold it, and then I didn't have another Sachs for a little while, and then ended up finding this bike. And this bike, I initially bought it to be a straight up road bike. And I got it and was blown away to see that it would clear 32 C tires, so 700 by 32s.
Okay.
And I had gotten to a point where I was doing a lot of conversions on bikes and running 650B, so I knew at that point this bike would clear 650B by 38 tires.
Right.
And so I was using a different bike at that point as my 650B gravel bike, and I ended up doing a swap to this bike and swapping over most of those components. And it became what was going to be a road bike into a gravel rig at that point. And I think it's kind of funny because like the guy that owned this bike before me was the original owner, and he had the bike for over 10 years and said he rode it 4 times.
Oh wow!
So it was one of those bikes that was a wall hanger, I suppose.
Oh, geez.
And he would either be stoked or he would absolutely cringe at the fact that this bike gets ridden all the time. It gets ridden on gravel. It gets ridden in the rain. It gets all the elements, and so it is a really fun bike to ride.
Yeah.
And so yeah, awesome bike. Put a ton of miles on this bike. I've been riding it for the last 9 months, and it just, yeah, it hasn't failed me, and it's a lot of fun to ride, and it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Because it's a Sachs, and it's got the excellent paint work, finish work on it as well by Joe Bell and his team. So yeah, it's excellent, and it's just so refined. If you get on, if you really get on the lugs and look at those, they're just so thin and so perfect.
Right.
They're just,
Yeah.
Richie is truly an artisan, truly a craftsman, and a master of what he does. And
Yeah. I'm spying a little like, what's the artwork here?
Oh yeah, that's the cycling nerd. I can hook you up with some of those for you, Lee.
That's
Actually,
nice.
I'm gonna send them out. Send them by your Bridgestone over here.
Did you draw
I
that?
did.
That-
I stole it. Yeah.
Oh, you stole it.
It's Dexter's laboratory.
Oh, right. Okay.
I'm going to do that.
There you go. All right.
Cool.
So, the blue Rock Lobster. Tell me about this bike.
Yeah, so this is the second Rock Lobster I had built, and I was riding a lot of gravel at the time and had a setup very similar to the Sachs, but I had it on my Le Mans, and I didn't have the Sachs yet when I contacted Paul to build this bike for me. And essentially, I told Paul, look, I've got this this road bike that I love, that's 650B, this Le Mans that I love, that's 650B road bike, and basically the frame is what's limiting me on tire clearance. And so I'm like, I've got these Tektro brakes, these long reach brakes that clear massive tires, and I would like you to build me a bike that basically fits around a set of Tektro brakes. How can you hear that? A custom bike
Right.
that fits around Tektro brakes. That's how this bike came about.
Okay.
And so I sent the brakes out to him, and he looked them over and was like, yeah, we can do something really cool with that. And so we started talking about what I was going to do with the bike, which is like, I'm just going to ride gravel with it. That's what it needs to be made for. And so this bike is modeled off of his 40th anniversary touring bike, which he told me he had a customer, a friend, that brought in a Renee Hearse touring bike.
Okay.
And he traced the geometry off of that bike, and then he built the 40th anniversary bike from that.
Okay.
And he was like, it was the most difficult bike I ever built. I hated it. I hated the whole process. He's like, I got on the bike and rode it 100 yards. I was like, this is the best bike I've ever ridden.
Okay.
And so he goes, I wanted to, basically his goal was to make the geometry the same, but shorten the seat stays and make it more of a gravel bike. And so that's what he did. And as you can see, it clears 47s and still has good space to spare. And yeah, it's a cool bike. Unfortunately, I haven't ridden it that much. And the sad part is that I kind of kicked myself a little bit because I told Paul I wanted to do a cool splatter paint job on this bike. And he said, okay, we can do that. And so he sent it. This bike actually does have wet paint, and it is not powder coated, it is paint.
Okay.
And I sent it to his painter and had this awesome splatter paint work done to the bike. And I mean, it is actually very smooth. Some of the splatter paint bikes, people will call them
Right.
braille bikes or whatever.
Yep.
They can have that chunky texture to it. This bike is like automotive quality
Wow.
finish.
Okay.
And so yes, it's a gorgeous bike, and no, I have not really ridden it a whole lot, just because I love the Sachs so much that I haven't actually really wanted to get this one out and get it real dusty, dirty, I guess, or whatever.
It'll have its day.
It's one of these days it will happen. Funny story. I actually printed up some Rock Lobster stickers to use as my cable rod.
Oh, wow. Oh, there you go. Nice. Love that.
That's super expensive. And
Yeah.
so I didn't pay it for any of them. The background's probably the one I paid the most.
All right, so this is the bike that got us together, right?
Yeah, right, here it is.
And I saw that you picked this up on Facebook,
Yep.
and not 5 minutes later, I was like, hey, Justin, if you ever decide you don't need that bike, let me know.
Right.
And I just forgot about it. I'm like, I'll never see it again. And then about 2 months later, I think it was,
Probably less than that.
you're like, hey, man, I got my eye on another Richard Sachs and need to pare things down. You still interested? And I'm like, done.
Yeah.
So I came over a couple days later and we got it. So I'm a big Bridgestone fan. I don't have like any of the like premier Bridgestones, XO-1, the MB0. I used to have an RB2, but I don't have an RB1. So this will be my like first legitimate Bridgestone, and so yeah, I'm really looking forward to putting it together.
You definitely got the king of all of them, and
well, with this color, I mean, to me, it's like I probably don't need any of the other like flagship Bridgestones after having this, because it's got a beautiful color.
The candies for the 1 year only, so that way it has massive tire clearance.
Yeah,
and,
it's in great shape. So
yeah, definitely excellent shape.
So I'll do a build video on this one at some point, but I appreciate you hooking me up on this.
Appreciate you.
I can't wait to put it together. And I especially appreciate you letting us check out your collection here.
You're welcome. Yeah.
And all right, there you have it. Thank you, Justin, for hanging out with us and letting us check out your incredible collection. You certainly inspired me and really got me excited to start working on this incredible Bridgestone XO-1. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe. Stay tuned for more. And in the meantime, just go ride your bike. We'll see you next time.